everybody. Welcome to Rapid Art. I'm here today with my friend Tom Simmons. I've known Tom for a number of years. I know I start a lot of these interviews with that phrase. And it's because, man, you've got to really get in with me early to get on the show. And that's, yeah, 20. I'm thinking if we didn't meet sometime before 97, you're kind of out of the running, if you've been wondering. No, actually, you could, whatever. All right. Well, I'm here with Tom. Tom E. Simmons is a professor at the University of South Dakota Knudson School of Law in Vermillion, South Dakota, where he teaches trusts, estates, inheritance, and ethics topics. He is an academic and ethics fellow and state chair of the American College of Trust and Estate Council. Prior to joining the Legal Academy, Simmons was a partner with the Gunderson, Palmer, Nelson, and Ashmore law firm in Rapid City, South Dakota. He clerked for the Honorable Andrew Bogue, a senior federal district court judge. He has taught at every educational level from preschool to graduate. In 2018 and again in 2020, he received the John Wesley Jackson Memorial Award for Outstanding Professor of Law. Thanks for being on, Tom. Man, I tell you, after reading that, I feel extraordinarily lucky to have you.
Thanks for having me on, Paul.
So, geez, my mic needs a little adjustment. Okay. Well, all right. The reason we're here today is Todd Browning is the subject of one of, we both have Tom's literary endeavors. And so this is his most recent project that I know of, and it's available on Amazon. And Tom's a South Dakota author, and that's kind of what the show is about. Speaking to people that are, in the state and doing things in the arts. Mostly, I'll talk to anybody really. But Tom, he's it's a really great book. It's really interesting if you're into poetry.
Thank you.
If you're into horror, I suppose it's like doubly interesting, but just even if you're not, I think the writing is of a level and of a quality that is pretty impressive. So how would you describe this collection of poems?
Well, I've always kind of wanted to write fiction, and I've never really been able to do it. I can only really write nonfiction. And so the closest I've ever been able to get kind of towards fiction is writing nonfiction poetry, and linking it up as a narrative and explaining something that maybe can actually be explained better with poetry than a lot of paragraphing and all that kind of thing. So it's basically a biography of Todd Browning, who, as you kind of mentioned, is kind of known for his horror stuff. Dracula is his most famous directed picture. And a lot of his stuff is kind of macabre and weird and strange and stuff like that. But a lot of it is not, too. A lot of it, he's done some boxing flicks and some romance stuff and some cowboys stuff. And so he's got a pretty neat mix of stuff. And it's a series of poems that just takes you through his life and talks about a lot of the films and drama that happened to him, and then takes you through the end of his life.
What got you interested in Todd Browning?
I think I was probably like 12 years old, and I was reading Stephen King's nonfiction book, Danse Macabre, which is about him kind of growing up and then also horror movies and stuff like that. And in part of it, he talked about this movie, Freaks, which Todd Browning directed. And at the time, you could only watch movies like at the movie theater or on TV. This is before videotapes and all that kind of thing. And this film was banned. It was totally unavailable. There's no way you could watch it unless you found a screening somewhere. And it was and Stephen King talked about it, and it sounded just kind of over the top, crazy, scary, weird, and just strange in ways that films aren't usually strange. And of course, because you can't see it, then it was like, that's my holy grail. I want to see that someday. And so I've always was kind of now it's really easy. You can just watch it on the internet or whatever. All the magic's gone. But that's the first interest that I had in Todd Browning, was Stephen King talking about this really bizarre film that you could never see.
So, I mean, once you started watching Todd Browning, movies and, other whatever video was out there, I mean, did you kind of get into it because it was sort of just like, it was kind of this thing that was difficult to find? It was kind of esoteric and weird. Or, I mean, was there something, I mean, is his work actually like really compelling just as far as sitting down and
Yeah.
watching a movie?
That's a great question, and I don't know that there's really a correct answer to it. He's
Yeah.
not a super great director, and he would probably never be recognized as that. But he's a pretty darn good director, and he's done a lot of interesting stuff. Relative to the fact that you typically don't really ever hear about him, except maybe in relation to Dracula or Freaks. But his stuff is really actually pretty interesting and worth watching and compelling. What he's partly known for is famous wise kind of is he's also made 10 different films with Lon Chaney, who is Phantom of the
Right.
Opera was his biggest role. And he did Hunchback. Those two big films actually weren't Todd Browning films, but they made 10 films together, and so they were almost kind of like a dynamic duo. And that's another reason I guess I got interested in him. And then there's this biography by David Skal. That's the only biography that's ever been written of Todd Browning, and it's out of print, so it's hard to get. And it's a really compelling, interesting story too. So I think all of those things, him being kind of unknown, the films are really pretty interesting, and people don't ever really spend a lot of time watching them.
Okay. Well, I wasn't real familiar with him. I guess I'm kind of, sort of into, I don't know. I mean, I like pop culture and that sort of thing. So I wasn't like completely unfamiliar with him, but this afternoon I watched it's the poem in here that you have like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
What was it?
The unknown.
The unknown. Okay.
Yep.
I thought and I tell you, that's one of the, it's a really tense, I found to be 50 minutes of film. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I was really impressed.
Yeah, they're neat. They're neat. They're very entertaining. And so, I mean, Todd Browning grew up in the circus. He grew up learning how to extract money from people, how to entertain people and separate them from their money, which sounds really kind of ghoulish. But I mean, there's something there that's really important for people in the arts to learn about what makes people excited and attend to what you're doing. And he just spent so much time as a very young person mastering that. And a lot of his movies are about carnivals and circuses and sideshow issues and stuff like that, partly because I think he was interested in it, and partly because it sold, because it sold tickets to the movies as well. But he's very good at not just, I guess, making money, but that's part of it, is making something that's interesting enough that it does make money.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think Pete Townsend in a Rolling Stone interview, he was asked if what's more important, writing a song that's important and relevant and has something to say, or a popular song, and he said that they're the same thing. I don't know if that has anything to do with it.
Yeah, I think it does. I think that's interesting.
Not to change the topic to music, but
yeah.
But I mean, if it's not compelling, then nobody's going to see it. Then what's the point?
Right.
On some level, it should be, maybe art needs to be compelling. Even if it's, on a level that takes a little bit of time to understand.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Can you, well, okay. So he worked in the circus, but what was his childhood like?
Yeah. So he grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. He's a Kentucky kid from Louisville. Okay. And, there's baseball fans out there. His uncle was Pete Browning. And when this bat manufacturer in Louisville started to make a new bat, they named it after Pete, and they called it the Louisville Slugger. And his uncle is the Louisville. He was a Major League Baseball player, 3-time batting champion, a real drunk, had a lot of problems, had these weird ideas about to get ready for a game, he'd go like stare at the sun. He thought that was really good for his eyes. He believed there was so many hits in a bat. When you got to that, then you had to get a new bat because the hits were all gone. Anyway, quite a character, and he grew up kind of near him in Louisville, and then became famous himself, obviously, growing up. And he left home for the circus when he was, it's disputed, but like maybe 12. He's like, I'm joining the circus, and off he goes and starts making money.
Why? I mean, do you think that he would join the circus if he felt like most normal kids feel? Was there something going on in his head that was different than maybe? Did he feel accepted? Did he feel like he was part of the?
Yeah. So you wonder about that, because you're right. I mean, and I don't know that he left home at 12. That's partly legend. He might have been more like 17, but people don't know exactly when he was born. That's also disputed because his birth certificate's never been found. And, he's a relatively recent American character, and we just lack some history. He never really talked about himself. He never really promoted himself. He was very successful economically, but he wasn't really a self-promoter. And so he didn't create this whole mythology around himself and do endless interviews for Variety or Parade or whatever, like most people would. And so there's not much there in terms of speculating about what is it that drove him. But he left home, and he didn't really ever hardly come back. He didn't come back for either of his parents' funerals. And yeah, that tells you something. I'm not sure what to make of it, but clearly unusual.
And a number of his films are actually gone. They're no longer extant, right?
Yep. Yeah. The majority of them are completely lost. The Silver Nitrate film, if you've seen Inglourious Bastards, the climax of how easily it is to make the film burn and kill the Nazis. A lot of these films, there would be one copy, and they were stored. But there would be this film ignites at like 110 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, even some of his movies were remakes of like, Mark of the Vampire.
Yep. He would, when sound came out, especially, they started remaking all these films that were silent films. They're only like 8 years old, but they're like the new remake talkie version of, one of them was London After Midnight, which is a silent film. It's probably the greatest lost silent film. That's the one with Lon Chaney with the really scary looking teeth and kind of the bald head, and you'd know it if you saw it. It's even more famous than him as the Phantom of the Opera, and that's totally gone. It was burned up, and it's missing, and the great majority of his films just have little snippets about what the plot was, a movie poster, maybe a description like in the trade magazines, and sometimes some testimony from people that saw it. And those interviews are recorded. Yeah. So Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho, saw London After Midnight, and people went and interviewed him. And there's all these like transcriptions of what Robert Bloch remembers about the movie, which is also kind of doing in its own way that it's something that's important that's lost, and that does have a certain, I think, resonance of some kind. That's not just because it's hard, not just that. There's something else to it,
Right. Hey, Lon Chaney's name has come up a few times. Can you tell us a little bit about their relationship?
Yeah, they did 10 movies together. I think they pretty much didn't really care for each other. There's a poem in the book where they're just staring at each other after a steak dinner and kind of smashing out their cigarettes and just staring at each other. And I think that's kind of how their relationship probably was. They both are very, very strong-willed artists, knew exactly what they wanted. And sometimes those things were different. And so I don't think they really had a great relationship. They were able to get the product done. They were able to work together, but they didn't really have a lot of fondness for each other, I don't think.
Yeah. It seemed to me that if they made 10 movies together, there must have been some kind of chemistry that, at least I would think, as the director, Todd Browning must have had some kind of feeling for this guy, or got a feeling from him, or fed off some kind of weird energy that he had.
I think that's right. And I think they really did respect each other artistically a great deal. I mean, if you watch some of those Lon Chaney, the one you were just describing, you can't take your eyes away from him. He is magnetic. He's absolutely unbelievable, and you don't really. And I know people are like, "Oh, you mean it's a silent movie? I have to," and then it's black and white on top of it. I don't want to.
No,
You just sit down and you're
gotta
like,
watch it.
He's in a. You can see why he was famous and why the world just mourned when he died at age 44. Got throat cancer and was gone. He's just amazing. So I can see why Todd Browning wanted to continue to work with him, and he must have felt the same measure of respect for Todd Browning in the way that he was able to put the films together.
On some level, it seems that must have been the case. Well, like the first movie that Todd made after Lon Chaney's death, it was Bela, the Dracula with Bela Lugosi. Is that right?
Yes.
And he had wanted to actually cast Lon Chaney in that role.
Right. And Dracula it's a neat film. Dracula is a neat film, but it's probably one of Todd Browning's worst films. It's really, it's got some great scenes and set pieces in it, but what really makes it is just Bela Lugosi. I can't do the Bela Lugosi thing, but he just comes at the camera, and his eyes are just there, and you're like, okay, that's freaking me out, and nobody can. It's all about Bela Lugosi in that movie, so it's really hard to imagine Lon Chaney in it. He'd be great, but it just wouldn't be the same as Bela. So,
yeah. Well, hey, maybe this is a good time to talk about your favorite Todd Browning movie.
Yeah, I think Unknown is really good. And I think I'd have to probably say, let me think. West of Zanzibar maybe is an interesting one. West of Zanzibar, I would say. That's a weird one.
Okay.
But it's Lon Chaney, and he always is in some kind of makeup. He doesn't have any face makeup in this one. He's playing as if he's in those days you'd say crippled. So he's doing his Lon Chaney kind of shtick, but without really any face makeup, and you can really see him act. And it's a really, there's some natives in it that's kind of misplaced and very out of date and kind of awkward to watch, but I think it's a really strong film, and I'd never heard about it before I just started to watch all of the films that are available to get ready to write this.
West of Zanzibar.
Yep, West of Zanzibar.
Okay. So what was the last movie that he directed?
Yeah, so I mean, he did Freaks, and Freaks is the one where he cast actual human beings with disabilities to play people with disabilities from the sideshow kind of thing. He's kind of filming the sideshow that he used to work in. People that are conjoined twins and so on and so forth. And he cast actual people in that, which I think he did because he actually just respected those people. He used to work with them. But when you see it on the screen, there's this weird kind of like, we're supposed to kind of willingly suspend our disbelief, and you're like, but this isn't something, this is actually like, that's a human being, and that's how they actually have to get up in the morning and stuff, and people just could not handle it. And my feeling about it is, it's kind of exploitive, yeah, but he's paying these people, money, and they want to act in the film. There's some exploitation there, but it's also, I think people just can't handle, like, they don't want to see those people and realize that they're actually people. So that just basically destroyed his career. It lost a whole bunch of money. He had another movie shortly thereafter that also lost money, and then the deal was kind of sealed for him. So his last movie is Miracles for Sale, 1939. And if you used to watch like Father Knows Best, remember that show? Sure. Robert Young, the dad in Father Knows Best, is the protagonist in that movie. And it's kind of a magician show. It gets it's always seen as being a really weak entry in the Todd Browning list of movies, but it's very actually kind of watchable and fun.
Okay. And so, I mean, I guess that kind of so maybe the last part of his life wasn't really great.
So yeah, he retires. He's got plenty of money. He's got a nice house in Malibu, and he just kind of, his wife passes away in 1944. And the last part of his life, it's kind of sad because he's kind of alone, I think, and going down to a local restaurant once in a while. But he likes to be, I think, just quiet and so forth. And he dies in 1960. He develops throat cancer, like Lon Chaney did. And so he kind of leaves the world kind of in silence, back to the silent era, sort of, as he leaves his life and passes away in 1962.
So, I mean, like today, Todd Browning isn't really a household name, right?
Right.
Is that more just because people just aren't interested in directors of that time, or is there something specific to his career that would say, hey, this guy is I mean, is he lost to history because of Freaks, or because of, I mean, or is it just that nobody, I mean, everybody kind of sort of, people know who Harold Lloyd is, they kind of
Right.
know who,
Right.
but nobody knows.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a reflection of him not promoting himself and not creating kind of a cult of popularity about himself. He made movies and he made money, and he didn't really care about himself being a big figure, and so he just didn't generate that kind of. And once his career was kind of over, of course, then he's just a has-been. Nobody's going to go and interview. It's only like decades later where people start to say, "Wait, there's something worth preserving there," and then it's too late. He's gone. I think it's a reflection of just the way he was a fairly quiet person in that regard and didn't care about generating any of that sort of background.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about Todd Browning, but like your book, how did you go about putting together, like what I think is a really impressive collection of poems on one topic? I mean, okay, we started this off, we were talking a little bit about it, but it seemed to be that's how you work. But you've got this, you're working, it's a historical topic.
Yep.
But you're putting it into you're using poetry as your medium. To me, that sounds extraordinarily difficult. I mean, I could see putting together maybe 75 poems about stuff, but not 75 poems
about Todd Browning. Yeah, it was actually
wow.
it was very easy. I mean, I would watch a movie and I would just let it kind of simmer in my mind, and I'd come up with, I want to talk about this. I need to talk about, that's the neat thing about a poem. I just want to talk about one scene from The Unknown. Well, that's
okay.
That a poem can be just like an image, one
Right.
tension kind of, and just like your paintings, it's just one piece of something with context. And so you don't need a whole lot to like build. Then, okay, there's one. And I wrote this quite quickly. It came together very quickly.
Well, so yeah, do you have a favorite poem?
Yeah. Do you want me to read one?
Yeah. Well, hey, can we save that till the end?
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
What is it?
I was going to do one about back when he was working in the carnival and learning how to bring people into the shows and buy tickets and things like that.
Okay.
You want something spookier?
Well, at the end, maybe could we read another also?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Well, I'll just do a little piece of this then.
Okay.
Barker is never used in a carnival. Sword Swallower Mannix takes over here for me. Bally, everybody. Enter a horse-faced thin man, ragged cuffs, scissor trimmed, and the Swallower further relates, draw the tip with fire. Todd learned the first night, tip meant crowd, and to light the torches, to draw the tip, soak the heads in the gas, produce a pot-bellied flute, make it wail, as if its tail is kicked out of him. Kick, kick, kick.
Okay. Thanks. Why did you choose that particular poem?
I really like the idea of imagining what it was like in the vaudeville days. The days, there's so many of the early film stars, Abbott and Costello and Laurel and Hardy and Charlie Chaplin. They all grew up in the vaudeville, like on a stage, and then films started to be made, and they made this transition, But they'd grown up with the vaudeville stuff, and the early films are so influenced by vaudeville because of that, because they're all people that used to have done that kind of work. And I like the idea of sitting out with one of those silly little kind of canes or whatever, and a funny little straw hat saying, step right up or whatever, and just getting better and better at that thing that he then used to make movies and kind of draw people in the same way.
Yeah, I think maybe he thought of the viewers or the ticket buyers as marks, but I think I get the feeling he really did want to provide some quality entertainment.
Yeah,
so
I would agree.
Wanted to show up.
Yeah, I would agree. And his, especially compared to today, there's not there's some kind of weird themes and stuff in his films. There's not a lot of depravity. There's not a lot of celebration of pain
Right.
or dirt. You know, they're I wouldn't say they're clean films. They're quite macabre and weird a lot of times, but they don't, I guess, like wallow in misery in a way that
Yeah.
they like people now sometimes try to find that to be enjoyable or something that we should go towards. And he doesn't do that. He's weird, but he's not.
Yeah. It's not like a revenge, you know,
Right.
type. It's, which actually, yeah, a lot of, I think that's why I quit watching movies in the 80s. Everything was about somebody being kidnapped and then somebody else getting,
Right.
you know, it just, but like
Yeah.
in Unknown, we were talking about, I mean, I think part of why that works is you really feel for everybody involved. Each character has like a desire or a flaw or, you know, something that they're working. I mean, it's only 50 minutes, but each character has like has an arc of some kind that really, I mean, they end up someplace else by the end of the movie.
Right.
You know, it may not be good in one guy's
Right.
case, but,
Right.
but I mean, still you feel for him. I mean, you
Right.
get an idea of like where he's coming from.
Right.
It's not just like he is acting badly.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
You
Right.
know,
I think that's very well put. Right. I agree with that.
it's really sensitive.
Right.
It's all involved. Okay, let's see. I want to. Oh, hey. Oh, is it just sort of a coincidence that maybe the whole thing with COVID and the like everybody locking, you know, the lockdown and maybe things slowing down happened, and then you know the book came out, or was this sort of in the plan? I mean, did this have anything to do?
No, it didn't.
Okay, you were
That's
kind
just
of on your
coincidental.
way anyway.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And then like, can you tell me a little bit about how it was published or who is the publisher, if it's you or if there's other parties involved?
Yeah. So there is a poetry journal out of India called the Taj Mahal Journal, and I had
Yeah.
submitted a poem to it, and the editor emailed me and said, "Do you have anything you want to publish, like as a full book?" And I'm like, "Wait, what about this?" And he's like, "Okay, yeah, let's do that." So, so it's a small press, but it's a real book. It's called Cyberwit, and they have their own website, and they have other poetry, but they have a lot of different poetry books.
All right. And then I probably wouldn't have asked this question, but since it's on the topics that you sent, among the topics that you sent me was what's the deal with the cover?
Oh, so this
What's
is,
going on
yeah,
with that?
right. So the cover illustration is a painting by one of South Dakota's greatest visual artists. You've heard of Oscar Howe.
Yeah.
This is Paul Peterson.
Okay.
This is you.
It's me.
And it's a very
Yeah, you should have got a
atypical.
hold of me before you used that.
Oh no, yeah, and it's a very atypical. It's kind of a dark, cloudy, scary painting, which is, I think, unlike any other painting I've ever seen of yours. So it's very atypical in that sense, but it fit for this book.
Yeah, I'm proud to be part of your project. I think it's great. Um, okay, well, I think if we could finish up with, well, okay, I don't know if this will work or not, but I really enjoyed Todd Browning at church, and
Ah,
I found it like really cryptic and weird, and it seemed to me like it it seemed like sort of a really condensed history of vampire lore, perhaps, or I'm not sure exactly what it's about, but would that make a good reading?
I think so.
Perhaps.
Do you have your page number for me?
Um, so,
Is that towards the? I don't think that's the title. I know what you mean, but I don't know.
oh, that's not the title. Okay, that was probably. Um, yeah, actually, I think I do have a page number. If I can. No. Sorry, I thought.
Is it the one with an organ in it? Is
We
that the
can
one
cut this part out.
Okay.
I have it bookmarked. Page 55.
Oh, 55.
Or Browning at Church.
Oh, yeah.
That's not a title?
It is. I just couldn't find it when you said that in the.
Oh, okay.
God, this is, Paul, I will do this for you, but
Yeah.
it's got a lot of really hard to pronounce words in it that I didn't have to pronounce when I wrote down.
Well, that's all right. I want to play music over it or with
Okay.
it along underneath it.
It'll be okay, just as long as the mispronunciations is kind of part of the whole thing.
If they're that difficult to pronounce.
No. Let's give it a try.
I won't. No, nobody will know anyway, I guess is what
That's true. Should I go?
Yeah, sure.
Browning at Church. Enter. Column depressors of Enoch, tyrants in coalition with pejorative, who thrust pruning hook spears rudely, who will mingle infants with the asp. I'll call them Mahershala Hashpaz, cast them, haste spoil, speed booty. Arranging 6 cockatrice tears towards 7 soft-winged man-like creatures, whisking snail legs perversely laid, the worst lack all but a conviction, while they themselves, they stew it. All this venom is mere autonomy, taunting any coxcomb crown. With little king, what do you do? Tan chorus matted to Jerusalem's threshing room floor, straw todden down the dunghill. Bel boweth down, Nebo stoopeth. Vomits Bel Sennabacher's tribute upon the eager night hags, before sawing a Deuteru Isaiah asunder. Exit. Apocalypse of an exile to be.
And everybody snaps their fingers. Okay. Yeah, thanks, Tom. This was
Thank you, Paul.
great.